glad you're here. Welcome to the 3-hour Glitch in the Matrix Marathon Sleep Aid. Over the last couple of months, I've been dropping these shorter 30 to 35 minute episodes where I share Glitch in the Matrix stories, past life stories, parallel universe stories. We love that stuff here. I've decided to smash all of those recent episodes into one big sleep marathon to help you fall asleep and stay asleep. As you get settled in, I want to mention this video's sponsor, Manta Sleep. I've been using their new white noise machine for the last week since I got it, and it knocks me out so quick I feel like I can't rest without it now. It uses advanced noise-blocking technology for truly undisturbed sleep. No matter what your environment sounds like, the white noise machine is designed to be placed between you and the noise. One button turns it on, and it creates this immersive sound shield separating you from whatever's on the other side. Block the noise before it gets to you. It comes with a bedside control pad with large buttons, a sleek LED-free design, and 15 specialized non-looping sounds that are optimized for deep sleep. Mrs. Weber and I prefer the rain sounds. You can get yours by visiting the very first link at the top of the description and by entering code GLITCH at checkout for 10% off. Let me know how you like it. Alright, so check this out. I left my sister's house, and on my way home, my mom called me and asked if I could go to my aunt's house to let her dog out. I said sure, because on the highway I take to go home, their exit is only a mile past ours. So I came up toward my usual exit that I take to get home, and I pass it. I know for sure that I passed my exit because I remember driving under the overpass that it connects to. So I immediately got into the middle lane and then switched to the far right lane where my aunt's exit would be coming up to. Now, to preface, I take this exit all the time. I'm very familiar with the location. I guess I completely zoned out as I was listening to a song. It was me and Bobby McGee. And at the end of the song, I realized I'd been driving way too long, and I had to have missed the exit to my aunt's house. I didn't even have enough time to wonder how or when I might have missed it when I came up to another exit. I got off on this one, and I was completely confused about what just happened when I realized it was the exit that I take to go to my house, that I vividly remember passing minutes earlier. I know this doesn't make any sense. I drove straight the entire time. I know for a fact that I passed my exit very intentionally, and then I kept driving for several minutes just listening to that song. I don't have any issues with my brain. I'm 26, I'm healthy, I'm not crazy, there's no drugs in the picture. Nothing like this has ever happened to me before. How did I end up back at my exit? What do you think happened? I don't know what to think other than it felt like a glitch in the Matrix. I'm still shaking as I type this. It's midnight on December 28th, and what happened just a few hours ago has me questioning the boundary between our world and the unseen. And before I get into it, I need to clarify just a few things. I am completely sober. I don't do drugs, and alcohol is entirely out of the question for me since I'm Muslim. My only real guilty pleasure is my love for movies. I'm a big believer in owning my media. I'm not a fan of the streaming era. I prefer to download my movies and series so I can watch them on my own terms. It's a habit that actually makes this story a lot scarier. I'm also not here to push anything onto anyone. I'm just sharing this for context because it explains why this rattled me so much. Like I said, in our Muslim traditional doctrine, we don't really buy into the multiverse or the parallel reality theories. To us, those are just philosophical ideas, not reality. We like to believe in one universe shared by all humans and jinn, which are entities made of smokeless fire. We have this belief that since jinn are essentially plasma or energy, they can interact with electricity and digital screens, using them almost like mirrors or portals. Here's what happened. I was doing a rerun of Harry Potter, particularly The Prisoner of Azkaban. I was lying down, had my headphones on. I was in that relaxed, drowsy state where you're just about to drift off, but you're still following the plot. At exactly 1 hour and 23 minutes in, when Hermione lowers her wand in Malfoy's face, the screen did something that it shouldn't be physically capable of doing. In that moment, the screen turned into a horror movie. I saw holes opening up in Hermione's face, and literal worms started crawling out of her skin. Her tongue dropped and she started moaning. It was a vivid, trypophobic nightmare. I wasn't drowsy enough to be dreaming, and I was conscious enough to react instantly. I shot up out of bed, I hit pause, and I could see the screen freeze in that horrific image. While the movie was paused, I hit Win-Shift-S to grab a screenshot, like just out of muscle memory in a flash. And as I was looking at the paused, worm-infested face, the movie started changing back to normal while the player was still on pause. It was like an overlay was just being pulled away, or the movie was healing itself in real time. I immediately and instinctively checked the screenshot that I had just taken, and the screenshot showed a perfectly normal, beautiful Hermione. No holes, no worms. And then I checked the file's MD5 hash. If the file itself had been altered or corrupted, then the hash would have changed, but it hadn't. The data was as, quote, clean as it could be. Now it's December and very cold here, and my PC's running an RTX 4060. Now for the tech literate out there, you know this card is ice cold and it's power efficient. My GPU was sitting at a chill 32 degrees Celsius with a hotspot of 38. I never saw this thing come close to 70, never, not even while pushing it to the max. All that to say, there's zero chance of hardware overheating or graphical artifacts. This could not have been a GPU glitch. I've had them before, but they were more like pixelated errors on the screen. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm just a guy who saw a digital file transform into something grotesque and then wipe its own trail right in front of my eyes. I didn't think to screen record because it was too late to do so to capture the evidence. I'm just surprised that I had the forethought to take a screenshot at least. Has anyone else, especially those with a similar spiritual background, experienced tech being manipulated like this? I've seen IRL shadow figures and I've heard ghost footsteps in my village before, but this digital manipulation is a whole new level of frightening. I'd love to know if I'm alone in this, or if anyone else has seen their digital reality rewrite itself. This person includes an update that says, I survived my first Reddit post without being bullied into oblivion. As a very introverted and private loner, this was basically my personal Super Bowl of social interaction, and I'm genuinely surprised by the main character support that you guys gave me. After reading all of the comments and doing some research in the terms that you all provided, I'm settling on a 60-40 split. That means 60% of me accepts the hypnagogic hallucination, a software glitch in my own brain, but 40% stays tied to my faith in the unseen, the jinn that I mentioned earlier. I've seen real-world horror, paranormal stuff before. I know what petrified feels like, but this experience felt, a lot more sinister in a way that those things didn't. I'm being genuinely honest when I say, whether or not whatever happened, it's a glitch that I experienced. Forgive me if I'm not using Reddit perfectly yet. I'm still learning the ropes. I was going to grab a coffee this morning at a Tim Hortons that I don't usually go to. If you don't know what a Tim Hortons is, it's a Canadian coffee house. The drive-through line was extremely long, so I decided to go in. It was completely empty inside, aside from two men. They were about 50 or 60 years old. They were sitting together at a corner table. Both of them locked onto me as soon as I walked in, but whatever. Creepy old men, that's nothing new. I mind my business, I order my coffee, and while I'm waiting, one of the men comes up to me, and he's just kind of standing near me, so I shift out of his way and I politely say, "Oh, sorry, am I in your way?" And he says, No, sorry. Can I show you something?" Now, of course, I'm cautious at this point, and I say, "Well, that depends on what it is." And then he proceeds to reach into his pocket, he takes out his phone, and then he shows it to me. His screensaver is a young woman who looks identical to me. I mean, if you put us side by side, we literally could be twins. He tells me that that's his daughter, and that he was just taken aback when I came in. I laughed, and I told him I agree. We do look extremely similar, and then I asked for her name. He told me her name was Jade. And this was another blip on my what the crap is happening radar. When I was a kid, all I wanted was to be called Jade. All of my gamer tags were a variation of it, and then some numbers. And when I played make-believe with my friends, I always made them call me Jade. I would even tell strangers that my name was Jade. Cashiers and stuff. It was this strange obsession that I think a lot of kids have with names that they wish they were named. I just smiled and said it was a very pretty name. He explained that she's now in Hong Kong, and I told him, "Oh, that'd be a fun trip." And then he proceeds to tell me this crazy story of how she was scammed into taking a package to China and got arrested in Hong Kong. This exact story actually happened about 3 years ago in a town about 4 hours away to a woman that my family was loosely tied to. I look at him and I say, I want to be sympathetic, but are you messing with me right now? Because, the coincidences were just too strong. And he told me that he swears on the Bible and isn't trying to make me uncomfortable. He just had a hard time not talking about it, of course. Now, I work inside the court system, specifically with mentally ill offenders, many of them struggling with addiction. I start to do my regular checks for signs of intoxication on this guy and mental health symptoms. But the man seems completely lucid. Now I jump to, he's just trying to pickpocket me. This wasn't a bad part of town or anything, but still, you never know. My belongings are still on me, and the other man he was sitting with is also standing about 5 feet away. This is when he starts to tell me that his daughter wanted to get into law enforcement and was also enrolled in the same school and the same discipline that I recently graduated from. Now, I'm not necessarily someone who looks like I work in the field that I do, and I definitely don't advertise it on my person. He says he won't keep me any longer, and he apologizes. He shakes my hand and he says his name is Gary. He introduces his friend as Cameron, but says that people call him Taco Man, because when he drinks, he likes to make everybody tacos. Now this was my final time to get out of here moment. My ex-boyfriend, who I was with for a very long time, was jokingly called the Taco Man, because he too would like to get a little too drunk and make everybody tacos. I couldn't believe it. They held the door for me as I left, and I watched them get into a pretty nice, newer truck and then drive off. And I've never felt more strange. I woke up this morning to my towel rack looking totally different. I walked into the bathroom, ready to take a shower, and my towel rack immediately caught my attention because there were 3 towels on it. 2 towels were on the back bar, and 1 towel was on the front bar. Now, you might be thinking, what's the issue? Well, our towel rack has always just been 1 bar. We usually only have 2 towels on the rack, but there have been occasions where I've needed to hang up 3, but I know for a fact that there's not enough room to hang all 3 comfortably on 1 bar, so in those instances I've always just smushed them together on the single bar. There's never been a 2-bar towel rack to easily allow for 3 towels to fit like there is now. This was extremely jarring to me because I also had trouble hanging up my towel after my shower was done. I'm not used to tucking the towel between 2 bars, so it felt totally different and wrong to me. I even called my husband at work to ask what was going on. I asked if he changed it while I didn't know, or if he was just messing with me, but he was adamant that it's always been the 2 bars that it is now. I asked how we normally hang our towels, and he says we normally hang them over both bars. There's always 3 there. So I let him go, and I tried that, and it still just felt and looked off to me. At this point, I'm on the verge of a panic attack. How could our towel rack change entirely overnight like this? We've been in this house for 4 years, and I've used that towel rack daily. I'm so confused. Somebody in the comments says, you know, as freaky as this is probably not the first time you've jumped timelines, just the first time you've noticed it. Many years ago, when I was really into baking, my dad bought me a stand mixer for my birthday. Recently, I went to my parents' place to ask my mom if I could take that stand mixer home because I wanted to bake some cookies. I asked her, "Mom, do you remember that stand mixer that Dad bought? Can I take it home?" And she responded with, "Oh, the red one? Yeah, sure, let me grab it for you." We dug it out of the basement, and we brought the bin with the mixer and the blender upstairs. When we opened the bin, we realized the mixer was not red. It was white. It was the same brand that we thought it was, though. It still left us confused, and we didn't understand why it was suddenly white when the one that my dad bought was red. I quickly run upstairs and I ask my dad, "Hey, Dad, do you remember that stand mixer you got for my birthday a while back? Do you remember what color it was?" And he replies, "Yeah, it was red, like a dark red." I got freaked out, and I got immense goosebumps all over my arms. And that's when my mom came in at this point, and I was like, "Mom, even Dad remembers that it's red. How? What happened to this thing?" We were all so confused and freaked out and don't understand how we all remember vividly the mixer to be red, but suddenly the one we put into the bin all of those years ago is now white. I asked my mom if there was any possibility of it being a different one, and she said that she's never seen a white stand mixer before, that we put the red one into the bin together to store it away before I moved out. It's boggling our minds, and everybody involved feels super unsettled. I'm a middle-aged mom with 2 grown sons. Neither of them live with me, nor do I have a partner right now. I talk to and think about my sons all the time. I had recently moved into a new house and I hadn't met any of the neighbors. I was driving home from work one afternoon and it was bright daylight. As I was a few blocks away from home, another car got in front of me. It looked just like my oldest son's car, which is uncommon, and it was playing the same loud, booming music that he would be playing. I always say I can hear him coming from a mile away. I knew it wasn't my son, but I thought it was kind of a neat coincidence. As I was behind the car for a few blocks, they turned everywhere that I turned. Finally, they turned onto my street in front of me, and of course, I then make the turn as well. Then, of all things, I watched them turn into a driveway at the house right across the street from mine. It kind of tickled me that this car was so much like what my son would be driving if he were coming over, with similar loud music playing as he would be playing it, and they were my neighbor. They had parked in a driveway next to another car in the driveway, outside of a closed garage, and I heard the music turn off. As I was grabbing my things and getting myself out of my car, I thought this was an opportunity to meet a neighbor. I planned on walking over there as they got out of their car, just to say hey, and then remark over how my son has the same car, and how I lived across the street and it was nice to meet you, all those things. I got out of my car after a few seconds, and I looked over to where they parked, waiting for them to get out of their car. And after a couple of minutes, I realized nobody was getting out. It was impossible that they could have gotten into their house in the couple of seconds that I had looked away since the time I heard their music turn off. So, I slowly start to walk toward their house. I wasn't trying to be creepy or anything, but at this point, I was getting confused. As I got closer to their car in the driveway, I saw that it was now a completely different car. I mean, it wasn't even close to my son's car anymore. The car that I had been following since we got into my neighborhood was a green Volvo. However, there were now 2 black sports cars sitting in that driveway. I looked to the houses next door, thinking I guess it's possible that I saw the wrong house where they turned into, but there was nothing even remotely similar to a green Volvo sitting outside of any of these houses. And since a lot of the houses on the street are rentals, a lot of the cars are parked here. All of these houses directly across from me and each other had 2 cars parked in their garage, meaning that nobody could have parked inside the garage. They would have had to get around their already parked cars in the driveway. And all of these cars were empty. I knew I followed that car for several blocks, and I saw it turn into a driveway right across the street from me. But none of them was the car that I followed, and nobody ever got out of the car. So what did I see? I've never imagined seeing either of my son's cars before or since, so all I can say is, God, that was a weird experience. It's been a couple of years since then, and I've never seen a car like my son's anywhere on the street. To start, I'm a 25-year-old female. I enjoy hiking trails. I wouldn't really call it hiking because it's Florida, but you know what I mean. I like to walk in the woods. I recently moved to a new apartment in September, and this last month or so I've been trying to find good trails for me to walk, and I finally found one. I took my boyfriend's dog with me the first couple of times that I went. It wasn't a hard trail, but it was long. It's surrounded by trees and a lot of squirrels, but it also can lead to a nice lookout over the marshland. It's very pretty. Anyway, this past Sunday, it was a little chilly, and it had been drizzling on and off all day. My boyfriend and I had gotten into a disagreement, so I decided that I wanted to go for a walk. The trailhead is about 15 minutes from my house. It wasn't far at all. When I arrive, I put on my shoes. I hate driving with shoes on. And then I put on my jacket, and I always carry a knife on me. You never know what could happen. My headphones were in my ears, and I set off. Everything was normal, and I knew exactly where I was and where I was headed. There was a fork in the trail with a sign and a map letting you know that, quote, you are here, and this is where you can go. I even took a picture of the map just in case. At the fork, I decided to turn right. I wanted to go to the lookout over the marshland. I succeeded in reaching the lookout like normal, and it took about 30 minutes. Remember, I said it was a long trail. I spent maybe 20 to 25 minutes there, just listening to my music and looking around the area. It was still drizzling a little bit, that light rain that just kind of stays in the air. But it was somehow relaxing. I needed that. Now, this is where things get a little weird. I am a conspiracy theorist, and I do believe in glitches and portals and all that jazz. But nothing's ever happened to me for it to really settle in as an actual lived belief until last Sunday. Have you ever heard that if there are trees perfectly inlined across from one another on a trail, that it's a portal? That if you walk through them, you're walking into another dimension or something like that? Well, I've always made the joke when I see trees perfectly lined up on a trail. I say, hey, look, it's a portal. And no one really gets it, but oh well. It's a little bit that I do for myself, I guess. It's always been in my mind since I've learned about it, basically, and I just never took it that serious. On my way back to my car, I walked down that exact same trail that I had taken to get to the lookout. I was dancing to my music, and I had transparent hearing turned on so I could also hear the rain hitting the trees. And this time, I noticed that the trees were perfectly lined up, and I walked through them, mumbling, portal, and thinking nothing of it at all at the time. About 15 minutes into the walk back, I needed to use the restroom. I'm not opposed to squatting, so that's exactly what I did. It was the woods. I was alone, so what? I took a right off of the trail, maybe 10 feet, got behind a tree, did the do, and then walked back to the trail the same way that I came and kept going in the same direction that I was. I kept walking in that same direction, but when I started to pay attention, everything was different. There was a bench off to my left, just a few feet ahead, that wasn't there before. And then I noticed the leaves were this bright green, and they were not like that before. I kept walking, and now I noticed there's a bunch of benches along the trail. There were weird-shaped trees that I didn't recognize, and I honestly just kept going, not stressing too much. I didn't pull out my phone and check anything because I was confident that when it came to the trail, I knew all of it. Or so I thought. Eventually, I came to this little boardwalk. I'm assuming the ground got super wet there, so they had to build the little boardwalk, but still, I'd never seen it before, and that's when I started to freak out. I do like weird things. I'm in this subreddit all the time, and even though I was a little sketched out, I still kept walking, taking in my surroundings. I walked for another 20 minutes before I ended up in a parking lot for a separate trail that I had never seen while researching trails around me, and I didn't know this existed. I finally pulled out my phone and I looked at my maps. I had walked 45 minutes in the wrong direction. But how? I have no idea. I went the same exact way that I took to the lookout, and now I'm 45 minutes away from my car? I stood confused for a minute or two before I decided I just had to walk back. I checked my maps to make sure I really am going in the right direction and just hope I make it to the other side. After about 45 more minutes of walking, I finally make it back to my car. I've been thinking about this since it happened. The feeling that I had in my body while my brain was trying to figure out where I was equally as confusing as it was calming. I didn't feel like I was in any danger. I've only told my best friend about it, and she agrees that it's weird because I'm an avid trail walker. I don't get lost on trails. I know the rules, and I follow them. So how did I end up on a trail that I didn't know existed? Can someone make it make sense? Am I crazy? When I was probably 9 or 10, we were on a road trip up the East Coast headed to Connecticut. We stopped at a rest stop and my family members were grabbing snacks, and I decided to head to the bathroom. The rest stop was right off of a highway. Now, I don't remember at all what state it's in, but it's somewhere between Pennsylvania and Connecticut. I was trying to find the bathroom, and I found myself in a totally different section of the rest stop. Things started to look older and feel a little more vacant. I was walking through doors, and then I went into this door in a weird, empty room, and what I walked into was completely unexplainable. But here I go, trying to explain it anyway. I remember when I walked into the room, it looked like a disco show, sort of. All of the lights were just flashing with these rainbow colors. There were waiters that were walking around serving drinks, and there were a bunch of round tables with people playing bingo at them. The floors were like the old, speckled bowling alley floors. It almost felt like I walked into a completely different time period. And the weirder part is, the only people making any sort of movement at all were the people waiting on everybody else. People serving drinks. Everyone sitting at these tables were in wheelchairs, like those mechanical wheelchairs that look like Abby Lee's. And that's when I realized the people in the wheelchairs were mannequins, or at least they looked like mannequins. They looked like frozen, rock-hard people, although they were very realistic looking. The image of these mannequins is ingrained into my head, and explaining it to people is so hard. It was almost like these waiters were playing with the mannequins like dolls or something. But it was the craziest setup. The mannequins had over-the-top makeup and wigs on, and all of their arms were propped up on the round tables with bingo cards placed in some of their hands. I know what I saw, and I know this happened. This definitely was not a dream. As a kid, this scarred me for some reason, and I never stopped thinking about it. I turned back around and walked out the same door I came in, and I went straight to the car because my family had already gotten back there. I never said a word to my family about it at the time, and this is still something I don't understand. I know this sounds crazy, but it's still something to this day that I cannot explain. What do you guys think I saw? What the heck was that? And have you heard of anything similar happening to anybody else? This just happened a couple of minutes ago. I'm dog sitting, and it's raining hard in California. I have to go pick something up, so I got the dog to go into the backyard before I left. The yard is very small, and I didn't want her out there for too long so that she wouldn't get the house too dirty when she came back in. So I was waiting for her right at the door the whole time. She went and then turned around a tiny corner where I couldn't see her. So I started calling her back after she had been there for a while. She wouldn't ever come out though, so I just kept waiting, calling for her, wondering why she was taking so long. Eventually, I decided to try and look out one of the windows to see if I could see her through them, and I jumped when I saw her standing behind me in the back of the room opposite the door, clearly confused as to why I was trying to call her in. I genuinely don't have an explanation for this. I was staring at the door the whole time, and the storm door was slightly closed, so it wasn't like there was a ton of room to slip through either. I went around to check the other doors in the house, wondering if she somehow got around out front and came in a different way. But no, all of the other doors are closed. I have to assume that she somehow did manage to slip past me, even with me staring out the back door the whole time. Unless she genuinely does have teleportation powers and have only started using them now. Somebody in the comments asks, "You mentioned you were dog sitting. Is it your house? Does the house you're staying at have any secret dog doors?" And the OP responds with, No secret doggy doors here. I looked all around and I couldn't find any. Unless they're super secret. According to my parents, I've been talking about my past life from as early as 2 years old. My mom tells me that it was a regular event for me to sing along, word for word, to songs on the radio that I had apparently never heard before. When questioned by my mother, I would say, "I used to sing this." And when asked to elaborate further, I stated, "When I was in the Red Forest band, my name was Lisa, and I had long brown hair, and I played the guitar." I don't remember any of these conversations, but I'm now 35, and I can confidently say that my earliest memory is from my past life. I remember playing a gig with my band in a small hall halfway up a mountain. The car park was square, with approximately 10 car parks, and the entry for the band was via a side door. Around the car park was a footpath, and completely surrounding the car park and a hall was dense forestry with very tall trees. We only played to friends and family, and it was a very small crowd of maybe 20 to 30 people. My mom seems to think that by the way I was talking, this place was possibly in California. Apparently, I said it was at the end of a long, winding road in the forest. Inside the hall were an assortment of these yellow, click-together chairs, the ones with the rectangular square cut in the back, and a small timber stage which my band played on. The last part of the memory is me walking out of the side door at the end of the gig, carrying my hard-shell guitar case and looking back at the door, waving to myself while smiling, I guess at my spirit, maybe, while I remained standing there at the exit. I believe I died there. Apparently, I told my mom that my husband also played in the band. He was a slim, 20 to 30-year-old Caucasian man with a big, beautiful smile. He was wearing jeans and a top with a vest over the top, a bit of a hippie vibe, and I put the clothing to be in the late 70s. The hall was very basic, possibly yellow in color, and there are no windows. The car park is very tidy. There's not many cars in it, and I can't remember how I got there or what I left in. The memory is my one constant. That's the thing that never changes. I don't ever dream of it, it's just always there in my waking, active memory. In my present life, since I've been young, I've been a singer. I've constantly been able to access this memory, and it's driven me to take up music professionally. I can't read music yet, but I do play guitar and sing, and I've been doing so professionally, as in being a paid musician for local weddings or gigs or corporate events since 2011. I do feel like I've been here before, and from the clothes that I see in my described past life memory, along with the furniture inside the hall, I predict that it could have been roughly in the late 70s or 80s. I was born in 1990, so I've been working the math around that. I also have this large birthmark on the bottom right side of my back, and I've read that this can be an indication of a trauma site from a previous life injury. When the internet first became a thing, my parents started researching the Red Forest Band and the lead singer Lisa, but no one's ever found anything. I've done this as recently as a few weeks ago, and I went down the rabbit hole of the internet trying to find something, anything, that may have led me to some sort of evidence of my past life, but I can't find anything at all. It's so odd. The memory is so vivid, but I can't find any evidence to support this. After I posted the above information on a verified reincarnation page, a few people gave me some leads to check out. I ended up going through the entire internet over the course of a few weeks, looking for the exact hall that I can see so clearly in my memory. The closest ones that I can find are similar to those in the Redwoods in California. I also went down the rabbit hole of researching all missing Lisas in the 1970 to 1989 period throughout the world because I'll know when I see her, but I haven't found her. However, feeling as though I'd hit a dead end, I went looking into past life regression. A couple of weeks ago, I went to bed after setting my intentions to be given a sign about where I will find this girl. I had a woman come to me in my dream that night who claimed to be one of my spirit guides. I remember her face so clearly. She said to me, "You're spelling it wrong. It's not Lisa, L-I-S-A, it's Lisa, L-E-E-S-A. You need to look in Yosemite in 1988. I may have gotten the year incorrect, as I remember correcting her about my dream and saying, "Do you mean 1978? And she says, "No, 1988. But now I can't remember which way it might have occurred. Either way, 1988 has stuck with me. For someone who's never traveled, I've never heard of a place called Yosemite. I woke up and I wrote it down in my phone. Turns out Yosemite is in the Redwoods in California. Naively, I was pronouncing it Yosemite. That's how I knew it wasn't some dream that I'd cooked up myself. I'd never heard of this place. I've spent the last few weeks trying to get this information to spit me out the right woman on the internet. I know she's out there. To this date, however, I'm unable to find anything on a Lisa who went missing or died in Yosemite in the 80s. I am absolutely tearing the internet apart for any trace of a woman named Lisa who played in a very small, not famous local band called the Red Forest Band. I've searched Yosemite and other countries, as there is one in the city of Katoomba here in Australia, but there's no links to any known missing persons or even homicides with the subject person named Lisa. If anyone can work their magic, I'm all ears. Thank you. Several commenters suggest actually visiting California, especially towns around Yosemite, to ask locals and to explore potential halls that match the description. One suggestion specifically mentions the Golden Chain Theater in Oakhurst, California, which is near Yosemite, as a venue that once had a small capacity and yellow seats, somewhat matching the memory. Someone also in the comments found a real person named Lisa with the correct spelling, Lisa Arlene Crofton Colagraph, who died in 1988 in Fallbrook, California. She was an engineer, not known as a musician, and had no noteworthy connection to any bands. Another commenter suggested checking local yearbooks and other records, to which OP reports that they did and found no obvious matches. This person shares a story about how they say they died in Auschwitz, and they also say they're from Poland, so their English is not great. But I'll do my best to bridge the gap and translate where needed. My entire life, I've had these recurring dreams of war. Sometimes they were a little bit much, like I would dream about my town being attacked by the Nazis, or I would have had dreams about myself in the present moment being in World War II. Like, I would have my phone, my regular clothes, I would just be in the moment of the war. But most of the dreams were a lot more serious than that. I don't remember much from my childhood memories, but I do know that I have some scary knowledge about World War II, and I have ever since I was a child. One of the memories that I remember the most was about the chambers, how they looked and where they were placed. I also remember the, quote, wall of cries. I have no idea if that's the right translation. I hope so. My dreams are mostly just about running away with another person. I never saw their face though, but even though I would have these dreams regularly, the dreams of running away with this other person, I never knew what they looked like. And then my dream just ends. I don't ever think we made it to where we were going to. I could have possibly been shot. This person ends their story by saying, I'm going to try a past regression session, and I'll give everybody an update after I'm done. Talk to you soon. Well, they do. Some time has passed, and here's their update. They say, it's been a couple of days since my regression. I did it. It was kind of blurry, but I also discovered more of my lives. In one of them, I was some kind of divine being, or maybe a robot that looked a lot like a human. I was thrown into the galaxy, down to Earth. In another one of my lives, I was also a royal in Egypt, like some kind of princess, I suppose? Or pharaoh would be more accurate? Or maybe I just worked in the palace. I don't know. Funny enough, I do have weird childhood memories of me being really interested in ancient Egypt. I wonder if there's a connection there. Now, as far as the original story about me dying originally, I certainly did. I died in those barbed wire fences. I was trying to escape with somebody, and I think we were lovers, or at least good friends, and we were both executed. In a past life regression, we might see a past life that looks quite similar to our current life, and my recent client had one such experience. We went on a past life journey back to the 1930s in Tasmania. My client was one of many children. She was the eldest, and she described herself as blonde and beautiful with hazel eyes. She didn't receive a lot of attention from her parents because there were so many siblings that were born after her. She helped her parents take care of them. Her parents were farmers, and she helped with the farming duties as well. She didn't have much of a childhood because she had a lot of responsibilities, but she did have some fond memories of playing with her siblings, football, running through the fields, things like that. When she was 20, her parents forced her to marry a much older man. This man was helping their family get their farm out of debt, and in return, wanted her hand in marriage. Her parents agreed, but she was enraged and heartbroken, and she felt utterly powerless. She saw herself walking down the aisle, wanting to run away, wanting to escape this nightmare, but she knew she had responsibilities, and her family was counting on her. So she, reluctantly, got married. Their marriage was cold. She withdrew and avoided him, both emotionally and physically, and he understood and gave her time and space. She was at home, and he worked in the fields, and she would drop off his lunch every day at around midday. After doing this for a few years, one day, as she was dropping off her husband's lunch, she couldn't find him. He wasn't around. But there was another worker on the farm, and this person was much closer to her age, and they struck up a conversation. Soon, they began meeting every day, and over time, it turned into an affair, and before long, she became pregnant. It gave her the courage to tell her husband that their relationship just wasn't working, and that she was leaving because she found love with someone else, and her husband wished her the best and let her go. Now, as my client and I moved further into this journey, her life changed completely. It felt like suddenly there was color in her life. She was happy. She had a son, and she was married to a man that she actually loved. A few years later, she has 2 daughters. She remarked how loving and happy her entire family was. She was with the love of her life and a wholesome family with 3 kids. They had moved to a different place, a little bit farther away, and they were happy there. We journeyed even further, and now she's become a grandmother. She feels overjoyed at the new additions in her happy family. Her husband, still by her side, all of them in loving, harmonious relationships. We journey even further. On her deathbed, in her 80s, she was surrounded by all of the people that she loved. Her husband, all 3 of her kids, her grandkids, and she felt like she'd lived a remarkable life. She passed on through a combination of old age and sickness, feeling happy and satisfied with her life. When I asked her higher self about the purpose of this particular life, the answer was, family is the most important thing. She goes on to specify that's the family that we make, not the one we're born into. Somebody in the comments says, I really appreciate you sharing this story of your client. I'm undergoing my own past life regression therapy, and while I adore the work and the release and the peace that it brings, I also find it isolating that none of my close friends are going through the same process. I don't want to trauma dump my past life on a random Tuesday to them. So reading about other past lives clearing, especially beautifully and compassionately written like you do, brings me a little bit more of the sense of community that I feel like I'm lacking. OP responds with a simple thank you, admittedly stating that they didn't love the idea of sharing their clients' stories. However, some of their clients urge them to do so, for this purpose exactly. I have an odd connection to the UK. I've never spoken about this to anyone, and admittedly, I feel embarrassed to even discuss it. Maybe this is all just a deep admiration for another place or signs of a past life. When I was in elementary school, learning US and specifically California history, I'd get this weird feeling. I'd feel like something inside me wanted to escape the United States, and it just felt like I was trapped there. And this was at a pretty young age, so I didn't understand it. As a child, I started watching older TV shows from the UK. These were shows that were definitely geared towards adults, not kids. I remember just feeling so blissful, seeing how green and beautiful it was. When I was 10, I remember watching shows that were most certainly for people in their 70s. I found a journal that I wrote in from when I was 11, and I wrote down a bunch of goals of mine, but one of them that really stood out to me was to move to England. It seems so weird to me. I'm Brazilian, my family has no ties to the UK, and I also remember at about age 6, I was really fixated on the leprechaun and the Irish mythology. I would spend the entirety of many recesses at school looking through the grass for 4-leaf clovers and leprechauns. My grandmother told me a story of when her mother went into a coma. Her mother said that when she was in the coma, she was dreaming that she was flying over the ocean to England. She kept flying towards England, but she never got there. My fascination with the UK was forgotten by the time I was a teenager. My grandma planned a trip with me to go to London when I was 17. When we first arrived in London, I had the weirdest feeling that I wanted to leave. I didn't want to be there. There was this deep sadness and pain inside me I couldn't understand. That feeling left me as the trip went on, though, and within no time I started to feel that blissful happiness. I know this is also normal when you're on vacation. The part that gets weird, for me, is that we were driving through a typical street in London when I looked over at a studio with a big round window, and I'd felt like I'd been in there before. When I arrived in Glencoe, Scotland, I had an overwhelming feeling of awe and sadness again. I know this is typical to feel there because of its dark history. In Scotland, it felt like the land was pulling me magnetically. I was completely hypnotized by its beauty. This is a weird experience to have at the age of 17. I didn't have an appreciation for nature at that age. When I returned to the US after that vacation, a deep depression started to kick my butt. I don't know why, but I felt like I had lost something that I loved so much. I only heard people talk about heartbreak in the sense of losing people, but I was longing for something that never belonged to me. I was never the same after that trip. I don't know. I can't quite explain it. But like I said, I fell into a deep depression, and maybe this is just coincidental, but I'm 30 now, and I've traveled to many different countries. Something in me shifted when I originally arrived in the UK at 17. No other country or place that I've been to since then has had the same effect on me. Years later, I learned of the Welsh word hiraeth. It's a deep, melancholic longing or yearning for a home or a person or a time that's absent that may have never truly existed. I can't believe there was a word for what I've been experiencing but could never explain. Oddly enough, the word is Welsh, and the sadness that I have in me over that part of the world is so deep, I can hardly understand it. It feels like a sadness that digs into the deepest parts of my soul. I don't know if this is a sign of a past life or just signs of someone who has a connection to a place they've only visited once. I know it's easy to fantasize about a place you've never lived before, but this feels more like a deep pull towards something that's been in me since I was a child. Maybe the land in that part of the world just has that special ability, or maybe it just has that effect on me. Does anyone else feel this way? Well, I don't know how to start this, but first of all, hello. This is a thing that I've been thinking for a long time. I can't really explain it though, maybe you can help. But in the last few months, some strange feelings have started to creep up. I keep having these dreams about shaping clay, my hands moving in a rhythm that felt familiar. I could feel the weight of the bowl, the rough texture, even the smell of that wet earth. But I've never done pottery in this life. I don't even own a clay pot at all in my kitchen. And the weird part that I can't explain is that every time I see old ceramics in thrift stores or museums, I just have this urge to touch it if I can. It feels like nostalgia, but for something that I could never really place. I don't think that's normal. I've never even had a friend who's into it, but I keep dreaming about this small workshop with sunlight coming through a dusty window, my hands shaping something on a wheel, and that smell of clay all around. It's just strange for me. Why do I keep dreaming about that? I started to question myself, and I start to search for more information about what might be happening. I tried to rationalize it as just imagination or stress, but eventually I just feel like I need to find more. So, I ended up booking a past life regression therapy session just to see what I could learn. Honestly, I didn't expect much. During the session, I saw flashes that made me stop breathing for a second though. Flashes that were in the shape of a clay wheel. And I saw a cracked blue bowl. I was trying to fix it. I could smell smoke, and I could feel the sense of creating something simple and beautiful. I also noticed I was using my left hand differently too, something I don't normally do. Now, the one helping me through the regression session journey didn't push me, and they didn't try to tell me who I was or what I was seeing, but they did just ask what I felt and what stood out to me. The words that came to me were making, fixing, and patience. And somehow those three words describe perfectly what I've always been searching for. Since that session, I've started taking beginner pottery classes. Every time I sit at the wheel, it feels less like learning and more like remembering. I know it sounds strange, but, it helped me reconnect with something peaceful inside myself. I don't know what I believe when it comes to reincarnation or past lives, but I can't doubt the feeling that our passions, our weird little pulls towards little things, maybe they're not random. Makes me wonder, and maybe you've wondered the same thing, but what if our hobbies today are actually signs from another life? In 2019, I did a past life regression. I believe what I saw wasn't influenced by anything, because it was my first time and I honestly had no idea what to expect. But everything that I saw just made sense to me. Ever since then, I've been trying to find any information online about my death in that past life. During the regression, I saw two different scenes. In the first one, I was in the body of a man looking down at my shoes from a first-person perspective. My gaze slowly lifted and I realized I was wearing a full suit. I was standing by a large panoramic window and holding a glass in my hand. Behind me, there were many people. They were celebrating something, I wasn't sure. But for some reason, it felt like it was work-related. The view outside of the window was all New York skyscrapers, and I was on a high floor. I've always had the feeling that whatever job I had in life wasn't entirely clean. Almost like I was involved in something shady or dishonest. And during the regression, the life that I was experiencing in the moment, I had a very strong sense of justice, which makes me wonder if that's connected somehow. The second scene that I saw was from a third-person perspective. I saw the torso of someone riding a bicycle in traffic with a Walkman sticking out of their pocket and headphones in their ears. Then I saw a bright yellow car, like a New York taxi cab, and I didn't actually see the moment of impact, but I understood that I died in that accident. I'm not sure if it was a yellow cab or just some random yellow car. My whole life I've been drawn to the US, specifically American suburbs, but especially to New York City. I'm not American, by the way. For anonymity's sake, I'm not going to say where I live, but I will say I've never felt like I've ever belonged here. I suspect that I was born in the suburbs in that past life, and then later moved to the Big Apple for work. I tried to find any information about a case like this, but I don't know, I guess it's nearly impossible. Probably zero. My only reference for even trying to find out what happened was that era of cassette Walkmans, and the fact that I was born in this current real life in the early 2000s. I don't know. Maybe one day I'll get lucky. Somebody in the comments suggests, past lives are nice to visit, but you do not want to live there. Might I suggest you set some goals in this life and put effort in working to obtain them? Best to you on your journey. I'm using a throwaway account for this post because I'm feeling self-conscious. please forgive me for that. I grew up evangelical Christian. It left a lot of trauma, and I broke away from religion entirely in my late teens and early 20s. I was agnostic, leaning atheist for a while. I was very jaded and skeptical, but the idea that there was nothing waiting for us after death also never sat right with me. I rejected my old beliefs, but over time I became interested in exploring my spiritual side again, this time on my own terms. Over time, I grew curious about reincarnation. I liked the idea of it. I probably wanted to believe in it, I suppose, but I also found the evidence fairly compelling. My skeptical side was repelled by the notion, but I dug in anyway. I decided to do some past life regression meditations on YouTube. Seemed low commitment enough, and I'd done plenty of meditation over the past decade or so. I knew at the very least I'd have a relaxing and interesting experience. I went in without any strong expectations. I do have ADHD, so I expected my mind to wander a lot, as per usual. I tried to guard against my imagination taking over, or my skeptical side rejecting the experience entirely. I just tried to be open and as relaxed as possible. During the regression, what I experienced was a mix of seeing as well as a very strong sense of knowing. The practitioner's voice guided me to look down at my feet, and I saw what looked to be like some sort of men's boat shoes, or maybe some Converse. I was in a male body, and just for reference, I'm female. I felt that I was tall, and I felt powerful, and I felt younger than I am now, maybe 20? I could also see masculine forearms and hands that had seen harder labor than my current small, delicate hands. I was standing on the deck of a U.S. Navy ship, and I knew it was the 1940s. My mind immediately started to wonder, oh, is this World War II? But that didn't feel right. I didn't believe that I'd seen war or that I was headed for it. I felt happy, and I felt free, like a young person just getting to spread their wings as they enjoyed the new independence of adult life. I had friends on board too. I could feel that, and we had good times together. And I know for certain that my name was Fred. At a certain point, the practitioner guided me to go to the end of the life. I really tried. I wanted to, but I couldn't do it. I felt tension in my body, particularly in my back, but I just saw nothing. I knew that I died young, though. I received enough details in the experience that I was excited to research it all and see what I came up with. After all, with this much specific information, I might be able to prove to myself that this was all imagination, or I might be stunned to find a match. Well, after much digging, I found what I believed to actually be a match. The person that I found, the one that matched the description of me who I saw in the session, is still likely to have living descendants, so I'm choosing to be a little bit vague here. But his name was Fred, and he served in the U.S. Navy in the 40s, but it was after the war ended. He died young, lost at sea. I also found out he actually lived startlingly close to where I live now. Is that common in reincarnation? This leaves me with several questions. The past life regression I used asked if viewing the past life could offer any insights into your current life, or offer any lessons to take away from it. And I came up with nothing. I don't know what to take from my session. I do know that in my current, real life though, I've been very against joining the military, and I've been very afraid of being lost at sea. I'm especially afraid of sharks. Are those possibly remnants of this past life? Does this experience seem valid? Or does it just sound like an overactive imagination? Part of me insists that it likely is just that. But at this point, I don't know what else to believe. This happened about a year ago, and I still think about it all the time. I don't really know how to explain it without sounding crazy, but it's the experience that sent me down the whole quantum immortality rabbit hole. About a week before the main event, my friend Morgan and I were driving, and a car cut in front of us and kicked up a rock. The rock hit my windshield literally right in front of my face, and for a split second, it felt like the rock almost went through the glass and into my face, even though it didn't. I turned on the windshield wipers thinking maybe it was just dust, but there was now a chip with a tiny crack coming off of it. My friend and I both saw it. We talked about how annoying that was, and I didn't worry too much because where I live, windshields get replaced for free all the time. That chip stayed there all week, directly in my line of sight. Fast forward about a week later. I was supposed to meet Morgan for a night out, but I got out of work late, and by the time I got there, she was already a little drunk. I decided it was better to just drive her home first so I could relax and enjoy the rest of my night without worrying about her. It was raining pretty hard. I was on the highway doing the speed limit, and there are about 5 lanes, and I was in the middle lane with a bunch of cars behind me. I started to hydroplane. Now, I drive a sports car, and I do have experience controlling it. I drift corners sometimes, so I know how it responds. But this was different. I started fishtailing across the highway within inches of the median multiple times, like back and forth across all the lanes. We end up doing a full 180, and now we're facing the wrong direction in traffic, headlights coming straight toward us. As soon as the car stopped spinning, I booked a U-turn and I floored it so that we wouldn't get hit. Now, this is the part that really messes with me. Morgan is someone who knocks out instantly when she sleeps. She's very hard to wake up. Like you could be mid-conversation and she's just gone. However, in this moment, she wakes up with a gasp and says, "We got into a 9-car pileup." Now me, bewildered in the moment, all I could do was stare at her because that obviously would have been what happened if we'd hit the highway maybe 10 seconds later. Everything that happened after that just felt off. Also, while I was driving, I realized the chip in my windshield is now completely gone. The same chip and crack that had been right in front of my face all week was now missing. I have a dash cam, so I pulled over later and I checked the footage. My dash cam records in 2 to 3 minute loops, and the entire loop with the hydroplaning and the spinning and Morgan gasping awake to say what she said is just missing. It doesn't say that the file is corrupted or just halfway there or whatever. It's just gone. Like it never happened. Recently, my family and I purchased some new towels for our guest bathroom, and we tossed several of the older ones. I distinctly remember buying 2 towels for the shower. I even have the receipt for the 2 towels, and I remember washing both of them and hanging each of them up in the guest bath. Yesterday, I was cleaning the guest bathroom when I noticed a 3rd towel. When I asked if anyone had gone to the store and purchased a 3rd towel, I was met with a resounding no. No one else remembers buying a 3rd towel, but when I bring it up, my family says it's no big deal and just stop being weird about it. When I ask them why they don't seem to be bothered by it, they just shrug it off and say that I'm being crazy. And now every time I go into the guest bathroom, I have a family member follow me asking if I'm okay. Even my son, who was with me at the time when we bought the 2 towels originally, said that we only bought 2 of them, but now he can't remember if we bought 2 or 3 or even 4. My biggest concern is the fact that I'm the only person in the house that finds this odd at all. Just as a disclaimer, I don't believe in any conspiracy theories or anything. I'm simply recounting and sharing this event because it confused the heck out of me. It's the first glitch I've ever experienced, at least that I can remember. This just happened, and here's a bit of backstory. I was starting to make a sandwich for lunch. I got all of the ingredients out, and I laid them out on the counter, and I had some of the ingredients in my hands. As soon as I got ready to make the sandwich, suddenly I saw something drop right out of thin air in front of me, and I heard it audibly land as well. I looked, and it was a single clove of garlic. There is zero explanation that I can come up with, and trust me, I've been looking heavily. So, there's a small bowl, and it's full of garlic cloves that are ready to use, so you don't have to break open and peel a whole bulb. It's not in any position that a clove can fall or slip out of, nor is it overflowing at all. It's positioned up on a little shelf, pointing straight up, and there's only a few cloves sitting at the bottom of it, and it's not even close to being halfway full or anywhere near the rim. It's like the clove just jumped into the air and flew straight up vertically and then landed right in front of me, or as if someone picked it up and dropped it. My entire reaction was just standing there in awe and confusion while holding my 2 pieces of bread. Tell me your secrets, garlic. I need to know. Is this a sign to make garlic bread? Anyway, apart from that last sentence, the experience was entirely genuine and the story is very serious. I'm actually legitimately stumped and in confusion as I sit here eating the sandwich that I eventually finished making and try to move on with my day. I've never posted in this sub before, but I've read many of your stories because things like this happen to me all the time. I'm curious to know what you think about this one. On Christmas night, I was at my mam's house, which is what I call my mom. The kids had gone to their dad's, and me and Mam were just relaxing, watching the bake-off. I was wearing a new pair of slippers that my mam had bought me for Christmas, and when I kept getting up, something on the bottom was crunching as I was walking, and it was starting to annoy me. So when I sat down, I put my feet up, and I asked my mam if I had stickers on the bottom of my slippers. She said that I did, so I took the slippers off, and I peeled off the stickers. The stickers were stuck over the raised text on the sole that shows the size, and I went to the kitchen and I put the stickers in the bin by sticking them to a cardboard box that was already in there. About an hour later, we were there, just watching TV still, and I had my feet up again on the ottoman, and my mam looked at me and she said, "I thought you'd taken the stickers off of those slippers." I said I had, and she said there was still one on my left slipper. So I took it off, and I had a look, and it was still there, still stuck over the raised writing. On the other slipper, there was residue where the sticker had been in the same place, but there wasn't any residue on any other part of the slippers, so it couldn't have been a second sticker. I distinctly remember peeling it off the first time. We just looked at it, a little bewildered for a second, and then I peeled it off, and went back to the kitchen to put it in the bin, only for the original 2 stickers to still be stuck on the cardboard in plain sight. I peeled them off and I took them to the living room to show my ma'am, and we even matched one of them up to the indented pattern from the raised words on the bottom of the left slipper, and it was an identical match. We couldn't believe it. It literally made no sense at all. I peeled it off and I put it in the bin, and it somehow rematerialized. So I went and put all 3 stickers back in the bin. The original 2 stuck to each other, and then the 3rd one. And later on, my ma'am went to make a cup of tea, and when she threw the tea bag away, she shouted through the kitchen and asked me if I'd put all of the stickers in the bin. I said, yeah, I did. I put all 3 in there. And she said, no, there's only 2 in here. I went, and I looked, and she was right. I have no idea how this happened, but it did. Me and my ma'am were completely flabbergasted. I don't know if this fits here really neatly, but I'd still love to hear your thoughts. I was on my laptop last night doing a few things when a very weird thing happened. I first got this sudden, intense, uneasy feeling for a second, and then I looked at my left wrist to find out that my wrist hair was just gone. I've been trying to accurately describe the feeling, and the closest thing I could find is just the word eerie. The feeling definitely came before the realization of what I saw, though, as if it prompted me to look at my wrist. Something to note is that there are razor bumps around, not on though, just around the affected area, which is odd considering I don't even use razors. I only use shaving machines which do not produce these bumps. I've only ever used a razor once when I was about 16, and I'm currently 24. I've explained what happened to a lot of my friends and family, so I'll answer some of the most common questions I was asked from them. Couldn't you have shaved it accidentally? I shave my beard every morning with my right arm. My left arm does not get involved in the process at all. Additionally, I take a shower after I shave, in which I scrub my body, and I wear a watch as I'm getting dressed. The incident looks too unusual not to notice during all of this. Additionally, I was wearing a short-sleeve shirt throughout the day, and I saw a few colleagues, so if that was the case, either me or my colleagues would have noticed. Again, it looks too unusual not to comment on it. Also, if I had shaven it accidentally, surely I would have felt it then and there. I also get asked, maybe it's an allergy or a reaction to something. But I don't have allergies that I know of. I also didn't do anything unusual yesterday or even in the days prior, so I don't see how it could be a reaction to something. Another person suggests maybe it's the watch just wearing the hair away. And although this is a valid explanation, the area of hair loss is not proportionate to where I usually wear my watch. I usually wear it higher up. Also, I've had the same watch for 4 years, so if this was causing this, I would have noticed it sooner. I also searched if there were any cases like mine with this watch, but I couldn't find anybody else reporting anything similar. They also ask, maybe someone you know shaved it when you were asleep. But I don't live with anyone, so I don't see how this could have happened. The area of hair loss contains hairs of different sizes. Ones that are shaved to the skin, ones that are untouched, and empty areas that should have contained hair. I don't know of any razor or any electric machine that would trim or shave hair in this way. Another one of my family members asked, maybe it's alopecia. But I'm a trained medical professional, and as far as I know, alopecia presents as a patch of completely missing hair follicles. You wouldn't get variations of hair loss in areas affected with alopecia. Somebody else suggested that maybe it's a side effect of a medication or a symptom of some sort of medical condition. But I don't take any medications, and I don't have any medical conditions. I recently did some blood tests and everything came back normal. I just can't seem to figure out why this little patch of skin has no hair on it anymore. This happened to me on my commute home, and it's still making my skin crawl. I was riding my usual back road route home. It's mostly just one lane with forests and houses on both sides. You kind of get stuck once you're on it, since there's no side roads, no detours, and no alternate paths that split off. For a while, there was a motorcycle behind me. The rider was impossible to miss. He was wearing full, reflective neon yellow gear from head to toe. They stayed behind me for a decent stretch, with cars starting to line up behind them too. Now, at about this time that I'm noticing all of this, my Spotify was starting to glitch pretty badly. It was skipping, and it was cutting in and out. I disconnected from my Bluetooth, and then I reconnected, but the issue persisted. I switched over to the radio, but that was also skipping. I figured it was just the impending storm that was rolling in, and then I drove in silence. There's a section of this road where it dips down into a small hill. I usually coast it without braking and then stop at the stop sign at the bottom. When I did this time, when I stopped at the bottom, I noticed something odd. The motorcycle was suddenly really far behind me, with a long line of cars behind it, like way farther than made sense given how traffic had been moving. I continued on the back road for about another 10 miles. For most of that stretch, there was no one behind me at all anymore, which is unusual for that route. Closer to home, and still on that same road, I tried to reconnect my Bluetooth again, and it worked just fine. It was completely normal, with no glitching or skipping or anything. As I'm approaching traffic up ahead, I glance up, and there's this motorcycle. It's the same rider that was behind me a while ago, with the same bright reflective yellow gear directly ahead of me. There's no way for them to have gotten there. Like I said before, there's no side roads, there's no turnoffs or shortcuts. There's just trees, houses, and this one road. I can't explain how they ended up in front of me again. Nothing dramatic happened after that, but I don't know, the whole thing just left me deeply uncomfortable. I've driven this route countless times, and I just can't make it make sense. I don't know if this was a glitch, or just a missing time, or something else, but it's been sitting heavy with me ever since. I was staying at my grandparents' house, and they were out for lunch with friends. Just for some context, their house is a T-shape, with the long end of the T surrounded by gardens. I'm in the bedroom at the end of the T playing a mobile game. I'm super absorbed when I suddenly hear an almighty thump. My head snaps up to look at the window, and I see this pale, wrinkled hand with a cornflower blue sleeve pulling away from the glass. The rest of the body is obscured by the curtain. I can't see a face or anything. Instantly, I get up and I go towards it, assuming it's my grandpa back from lunch. But there's no one there. For some reference, there's a gravel path about 3 feet thick bordering the entire house. The windows are single glazed, which means yes, it gets very cold in the winter. So you can hear someone step onto the path all the way up the garden. For someone, especially an old man, to touch the window like that without stepping onto the path, they would have had to lean a good distance and then push themselves back. which doesn't seem plausible for my 87-year-old grandpa. I don't remember being scared though. I just went to both of the doors that look out at the garden, and I didn't see anybody. I thought that it might have just been a bird or something, but I don't buy that. There's nothing on the path and no birds that match the colors that I saw. Plus, I definitely saw fingers. I hear the crunching of the gravel as my grandparents pull into the driveway just 5 minutes later, and I'm still thinking that my grandpa was just playing some sort of weird joke on me. Only I realize that the woolen sweater he's wearing is just a shade too dark to be the one that I saw. I asked him about it, and he fervently denied it. And I know he wouldn't lie about something silly like that either. I'm not sure what to think. I know what I saw, though. A white hand, a faded blue sleeve. Nobody believes me, but I'm healthy, and I don't imagine things. This has been a couple of years now at this point, and nothing similar has happened since. I do believe that time overlaps, as I've had several weird premonitions, but, you know, I've never had anything like this. First, I want to say this clearly. I'm a skeptic. I'm scientifically trained, and I'm empirical by nature. But I also have to admit that a lot of very out-of-the-ordinary things have been happening to me lately. I'm open to conjecture, and I'm humble enough to admit that, in the grand scheme of things, I know very little. One of my favorite types of news stories is when scientists, or physicists, or astronomers are baffled by XYZ, something that was previously unknown or thought impossible and not explainable by current scientific methods or physical laws. As Mulder said, I want to believe. My most recent experience was what I can only describe as an apport situation, and I thought I'd share my story here since it seems to fit so well. This story involves a humble pressure cooker that my late mom gave me many years ago, one that I still use regularly. Nothing makes better hard-boiled eggs than a pressure cooker, and I have the method down pat. They practically fall out of the shell. Several months ago, I noticed that the slotted washer on the underside of the original regulator weight had gone missing. I was genuinely upset. I searched for hours, and when I say I looked everywhere, I mean everywhere, with military precision. I moved the stove. I moved the fridge and the table. I got down on my hands and knees and I searched the floor in this grid pattern with a high-powered flashlight. I checked every inch of the counter and the sink, including the garbage disposal. Nothing. I just kept thinking to myself, how in the hell did it just disappear? Completely defeated, I eventually ordered a full replacement regulator weight of a newer design, and life went on. I used that new weight for a couple of months, never really liking it. And then one day, after finishing a batch of eggs, I did what I always do. I hand-washed the lid and the pot. The only disassembly involved is removing the sealing ring and nothing else. I took the ring off of the counter and I walked over to the sink. I was holding the lid in one hand and a sponge in the other when I suddenly hear this tink sound in the sink. I looked down and there was the missing washer, lying there as if it had fallen from the sky. There's absolutely no way that I could have missed seeing that washer if it had been sitting on the outlet pipe of the lid. I had inspected that area obsessively 1,000,000 times, convinced that it might somehow be stuck there. And if it had been stuck there, the new regulator weight wouldn't have worked properly, which it did. There's also no way the washer could have been lodged inside the original weight, and the sealing ring couldn't have held it either. That ring had been removed plenty of times, and anything trapped in the track would have prevented the lid from closing. I was honestly so happy to have that washer back. It made the unit whole again, you know? All of the original pieces. My mom knew how much I enjoyed using it over the years. It almost felt like, I don't know, like a small kindness passing between worlds, like a way to brighten my life during a time when I've been having a very, very hard run of it. I wonder if the glitch in the Matrix idea includes some component where things like this don't happen until a certain frequency in a person's life becomes attuned to it, and then it starts to feel almost commonplace. I also wonder if some of this could be emotional disruption or even physiological. I don't claim to know. I don't think I ever will. I'm only sharing what I've perceived and experienced, and I want to leave it up to you to decide for yourself. When the sun comes up, my 3 cats usually start wanting to be let outside. Recently, though, my sleep schedule has been completely out of whack. I've been sleeping for most of the day and staying awake most of the night. Because of that, my mom was already in bed, and I was in the living room watching TV, wide awake. It got to be about 3:30 in the morning when one of my cats, Catrick Swayze, started scratching at the back door. I looked at him from several feet away and I had a very specific thought. God, that scratching is so annoying. It's way too early for you to go outside, and there's no way in heck that I'm getting up from my comfy spot to let you out. After a bit, he gave up. Then, about an hour later, I heard scratching again, and to my horror, Catrick Swayze was now on the other side of the door. He was sitting outside, scratching, waiting to be let back inside. I was shocked. At first, I tried to talk myself out of it. I ignored him, and I convinced myself that I was just hallucinating or half-dreaming or something. Or maybe it was my other cat scratching earlier and I just wasn't paying attention. Maybe Catrick Swayze had already been outside all night and I didn't know. But that didn't really make any sense to me. None of my other cats scratch at the door to go outside, and Catrick Swayze looks completely different. I can't not laugh at that. That's awesome. And Catrick Swayze looks completely different from the other 2. There's no way that I'd confuse them. I even considered whether it could have been just a random neighborhood cat, but that seemed unlikely as well. There's barely any other cats around, and besides, why would one of them come scratching at my back door trying to get in? They never have before. Still, I went back to watching TV, but I am most certain that I absolutely did not let Catrick outside. About half an hour later, my mom woke up because my other cat wanted to go out. She opens the back door, and I immediately see Catrick sitting right there. She turns to me and she asks, "Why did you let Catrick Swayze outside?" I told her I didn't, and I explained how freaked out I was because I had already seen him scratching earlier and couldn't understand how he'd gotten out. Then my mom said Catrick had been on her bed just a few hours earlier when she went to sleep, and suggested that I might have let him out by mistake without knowing it. But I told her again, no, I'm absolutely certain I never opened that door. Just to be sure, we checked everything. She checked the other back door. It was closed. We checked all the windows. Closed. Catrick had absolutely no way of getting outside, and yet somehow he ended up on the other side of that door. I'm usually a logical person. I've tried every explanation that I can think of for how this could have happened, but none of them add up. I don't know who to tell or who will even believe me, but I just hope that maybe one of you will. My boyfriend and I were driving home from watching a college football game when I looked up into the sky and I saw 2 Boeing commercial airplanes not only flying next to each other, but their wings were touching. I thought to myself, what the French toast? And I scrambled to get my phone out to take a picture, but we were turning left with an unprotected turn, so I couldn't just ask my boyfriend to stop. So instead, I yelled at him to look up into the sky, which I know was dangerous, but there's no way I could have convinced him as to what I saw without him seeing it too. He's very skeptical about stuff like this. And what do you know? He sees it too. When we finally finished turning left, some buildings were blocking our view. You know, we live in the city, so that's just what happens. I didn't see the planes again after that, or even a single plane at all for the rest of the day. And these things were flying very low, close to 10,000 feet maybe? And for those that don't know, regular altitude for commercial planes like this is closer to 35,000 feet. I could clearly tell they were commercial. Where did they go? Why were they touching? I wasn't able to get a photo, but I swear I'm not lying, and I didn't even know that this could be possible. Don't they, get sucked into each other or something? Where'd they go? I've been part of this subreddit for a while now, and I've never experienced anything weird or unexplainable that I can remember until a couple of days ago and today. My girlfriend and I live in an apartment complex that's not terribly old. I think it was built in the 50s or the 60s or so. So I wouldn't immediately label it as a haunted place or anything like that. For some context, my girlfriend and I are not known for pulling pranks on each other. That's just not something we do, and I know for a fact that neither of us could keep a straight face if we actually were pulling a prank. My girlfriend has this scrubby body butter thing that she smears all over her body after showering. It's the size of a soap bar. It's oval, wrapped in paper, and she puts it in a small metal box. 2 days ago, the scrubby was taken out of the box, out of the paper covering that it was in, and it was just laying on the bathroom sink. My girlfriend asked me if I took it out, but I don't ever touch the thing, so I said no. She said that she didn't take it out either. And I just thought to myself, well, she probably just did and then forgot, and then I didn't think much more about it. This morning, the metal box containing the paper and the scrubby was in our bedroom. I don't know exactly where, because she pointed it out and then brought it into the bathroom again. But it's very weird because she wouldn't take it out of the bathroom in the first place. It stays there. She only uses it in the bathroom and then puts it away in the bathroom when she's done. She wouldn't take it anywhere else. I know I'm harping on this, but the point is it never leaves the bathroom. The only thing that I can think of as any sort of halfway reasonable explanation, other than a glitch in the Matrix or somebody coming in and moving it in the middle of the night, is that one of us was sleepwalking. I did sleepwalk as a kid, but I'm 25 now, and the last time I did, I was probably 9 or 10, so that's very unlikely. Has anyone had any similar experiences? Shortly after granting me permission to read this story, the OP got back to me a little bit after, and they said it was confirmed that he was sleepwalking. Sometimes there is a logical explanation for these weird glitch in the Matrix events, whether we know it or not. And you know what? The fun part is sometimes there's not. This story isn't as crazy as some of the ones that people have shared on here before, but it's been almost 10 years and I still think about it. It was August of 2017, the night of the Mayweather versus McGregor fight. I was at a pub with some friends waiting for the fight to begin. There is an empty chair next to me because my sister was running late. As I was waiting there, I felt a tap on my shoulder and I heard somebody ask, "Do you need this chair?" And as I turned around, I said, "Yes, sorry, my sister's on her way." And when I fully turned around and actually looked at the person, I realized I knew him. It was a guy named Patrick. I got excited because I haven't seen him in a while. I said, "Oh my God, Patrick, it's been so long." He also got excited too when he recognized me, and he remembered my name, and he gave me a hug. He sat down next to me and we started catching up. You know, just the usual, I got a new job, I finally graduated, I moved out, that type stuff. We'd been talking for a bit when my sister finally showed up. I made the introductions, and then my sister asked, "So, how do you guys know each other?" And then we both got quiet. And after a few seconds, I started to laugh nervously like I do, and I said, I'm sorry, I literally don't remember where I met you." And then Patrick gets really serious all of a sudden, and he says, "Yeah, me neither." My sister said how weird that was out loud, but seemed to quickly forget it and started having a conversation with another one of my friends. Patrick and I started brainstorming about where we could have possibly met. We talked about where we went to school, different events that we had gone to, where we live, everything. I live in Montreal, where this is all taking place, and he lived in Toronto. He said he was just visiting friends out in Montreal. Now, at this point, I had never been to Toronto, where he was from. So we established that we must have met during one of his visits here in Montreal. He told me the names of all of his friends that live here, and I didn't know any of them. We each pulled out our phones and we found each other on Facebook, and we had no mutual friends. We thought that maybe one of us would have unfriended the mutual friend or something, so we exchanged phones and went through each other's friends list, and neither one of us recognized anybody. I asked him if he remembered what color my hair was the last time he saw me, since I used to change my hair color pretty often, and we could use this information to try to pinpoint the year or the month that we met. But again, he gets quiet. He thinks for a second, and then he says, "I literally have no memories of you." And then I realized I had no memories of him either. We talked for a bit longer, until the fight started, and then he went back to his friend group on the other side of the bar. At the end of the night, he came around again to say goodbye, and vowed to remember where we met and to message me as soon as he does. We added each other on Facebook, but I ended up unfriending him a few years later. It's been almost 10 years, and I still have no idea when or how I met this guy named Patrick. When I saw him on that August evening at that bar, I got such a warm and fuzzy feeling. I got instantly excited about seeing him. Like, my body reacted to him before my brain could process it. I'm absolutely convinced that I knew Patrick in a parallel universe. Or maybe it was a past life, whatever it is. I welcome your theories, if you have any. OP includes an edit that adds, "First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who shared their stories of similar things happening to them with me in the comments. This has been bothering me for clearly a decade, and it just feels good to know that I'm not the only one." And there are also a few common questions that pop up in the comments. Some of them that OP answers include, "Why did I unfriend Patrick?" OP says, on one side, "I felt like his Facebook posts were haunting me. Every time I would see one, I'd be reminded of the feeling that I felt when I saw him, and that I would likely never figure out what happened. I'm starting to get tired of that feeling. But on the other side, I'd been dating my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, for 4 years at this point. And it just started to feel weird and unfair to foster this unexplained feeling of longing towards this other person. I felt it was the right decision to unfriend him and move on. Sometimes I still get the urge to look him up and stalk him just to make sure he's doing all right. Another question that OP answers is, am I a drug user or a heavy drinker? They say no, they've never done drugs, and they have an intolerance to alcohol. They say I throw up if I drink more than half a beer. The third question that's commonly asked in the comments is he a one-night stand from years ago? OP says, no way, dude. I met my now husband at a young age, and I've never had any one-night stands. Also, the connection that I felt with Patrick felt a lot more intense and deeper than just what I imagine a shared one-night stand would feel like. During the summer of the pandemic, the first year, I guess, I was working at a Pizza Hut and I'd made a good friend. We would hang out after the closing shift and just drive around. I was living in the middle of nowhere in Indiana, so there's really nothing else to do. Randonauting was pretty popular at the time. It's an app that would give you random energy points with coordinates, and we decided to try the app out. We were out near some cornfields and we missed our destination. I was the navigator and I was looking for a spot to make a U-turn. I was looking ahead on the map and I saw this U-shaped road with a 3-exit roundabout, the second exit leading away from the main road. I tell my friend to turn into the road. We come up to the roundabout and then I tell them to take the first exit. We exit the roundabout, and this is where things get weird. We're driving back into the same roundabout. I freeze, and my friend is asking me which exit he needs to take. Now my gut tells me to take the second exit this time, so I tell him that. I say, okay, weird, take the second exit this time. And this leads us to the main road. Now, I'm incredibly confused, and I'm looking at the map as I do this, which still only has one roundabout on it. I said something about it being weird that there were 2 roundabouts when the map only shows one. But my friend has no recollection of that first roundabout, the one where he took the first exit on. And they still have no recollection of it to this day, even though I can remember it so vividly. The day after, I tried to find the road that we took to make a U-turn by looking at the map, and I'm just completely unable to find the road. It doesn't exist anymore. There's not even a roundabout in the area that we were driving in. Ever since then, things have been slightly off. The house across the street from my house is turned at 90 degrees from how I remember it, and the main road to the shopping center now feels a lot shorter than it used to. I know this because I time my drives. It used to take me 13 minutes to get to that shopping center, and now it only takes 8. I notice a lot of other little things like that. I don't know what you might think of this, but the more I sit with this, the more I realize that I think that first roundabout transported me to another timeline or some sort of parallel universe. I'm an avid lucid dreamer, and I have been since childhood. I didn't even know there was a name for it until just a few years ago, and I thought everyone could recall their dreams and visit places and things in their dreams at will. I have this entire universe that I often visit in my dreams. These are places, things, jobs, and countries that I've been to in my life. These places and these things in my dreams aren't always an exact one-to-one match with what they are in reality, but they're close enough that I understand what my subconscious is making, sort of a composite of things. I also visit things that I'm unfamiliar with, but I'm very aware when it's outside of something that I know. I also have what I call quest dreams, where I'm clearly looking for someone or trying to solve something. These are very clear dreams that I've had over my lifetime, and I'm in my late 40s, by the way, and they progress from one dream to another. I recently became aware that there's a random house in my dreams. Now, in these dreams, I know that I bought this house, but it doesn't look like any house I've ever owned in real life. I've had dreams about past and current houses, but this house doesn't change. It's a pretty set layout. I know my husband and I were renovating it, and also the neighborhood is very specific, and that also doesn't change. I've never owned this house in my present timeline. In my dreams, people also talk about this house. They talk about me. I've recently been overwhelmed with thoughts that there's something important in this house. Now, again, I've never been to this house in real life. It's just a part of my quest dreams. But it is always in what I call my dream world land. And again, my dream world land is 100% based on real world things and real world places that I've been. My mind will fill in the background, but it's all real things that I've really seen. But this house, it's been driving me crazy. And I just wanted to make a record of this somewhere in this timeline. I can't help but wonder if this house has something to do with, I don't know, like a parallel universe that I might be somewhat familiar with? Or maybe something in the house is trying to reach me through my dream world? I'm not sure. I can't ever really seem to get inside that house and explore the same way I can all of my other lucid dreams. And I know, I am fully prepared to accept that I have gone off the deep end. I've had a few surgeries over the years. A C-section, my tonsils removed, corrective surgery, and all by a plastic surgeon with local anesthesia. With all of these, I'd have the same reaction/experience coming off of the drugs, mainly feeling a little loopy and chatty, but otherwise like myself. However, about 3 to 4 years ago, I had the most unusual experience, and when I shared it with my husband, who was in my recovery room, it made the experience even more unusual. I was out of surgery after having my gallbladder removed, awake, and totally lucid. The hospital staff had brought some light snacks to my room, and I'd asked my husband to read me some news while I ate. He obliges me, and I'm sitting happily, just nomming on my Jell-O and crackers and sipping on my OJ in the hospital bed, when all of a sudden this feeling of urgency overtakes me, and I tell him, I need to lay down, now. I repeat this 3 times, and then this is where my story and his story completely diverge. He said, I suddenly just start convulsing, and my eyes roll up in my head. In a matter of seconds, the hospital staff rushed in, reclines my bed, elevates my feet, and then I came to, just like nothing happened. But for me, I lived an entirely different life in an entirely different reality where I was working at a lab in some sort of scientific capacity. In this life that I experienced, that I got to visit, I was a designer, and my husband is the scientist. I was making some adjustments on a machine that I was very familiar with, at least in that life, but in this life, I couldn't tell you what it did. It was big though, It had a panel about 12 feet long with lots of dials and buttons and switches and all that. I've been working on solving this problem for a while, though, of course I couldn't tell you exactly what the problem was now, only that in the moment, I knew it'd been a lifetime of research and trials, and getting it wrong before getting it right would help a lot of people, possibly even the world. The room that I was in was well lit, with large windows letting in tons of natural light. The floor was made of a series of grates with panels that you could pull up, presumably for maintenance on the vast bowels of the machinery. There was a doorway to my left and to my right. The room that I was in had this slight metallic smell, much like the old server rooms that my dad used to take me to at DuPont. My lab coat was unbuttoned because it had been a long day of work, and I had finally found the solution and was about to input the final pieces needed to complete my project. I knew that lots of people were counting on me, but I also knew there were a lot of people who didn't want me to finish this project, as it could tip the scales of power. In this other world, I could feel that I had gotten out of a meeting earlier with the president. Of what country? I couldn't tell you. Only that places like the United States and China and, other countries didn't exist there. And that didn't seem weird to me at all in the slightest. Anyway, I had the meeting with some president who had informed me that they were adding some extra guard details to my building to ensure that my project wasn't sabotaged, seeing as I was so close to completion. I wasn't working directly for the government, but I did have some sort of mutual agreement with them. While there were people in other parts of the building, the room that I was in was very limited access, and only a select group of people that I trusted were allowed to enter. I'd just signed off on some work that one of those trusted people had come in to have me review, and they had just left the room. I was reflecting on how nice it would be to finally get a little vacation time and rest from all this work and spend it with my husband and my family. Now, as a side note, in this world that I got to visit, my husband was the same person, but he stayed home and took care of the family, and our family was a little bit different in this world as well. We had 2 kids, when in reality, we only have 1. I was just about to do the final input and initiate the results when all of a sudden, one of the grates in the floor opened up and then pulled me down into the blackness by my feet. And that's when I came to in the hospital recovery room, and I saw all the people around me, and they asked what was going on, and my husband explained what happened, and when I asked how long I'd been out for, he looked at me a little bit oddly, and he told me it was only a few seconds. It took me a while to shake this horrible feeling that I had to get back there, wherever or whenever it was. I felt like I had to go back to finish my work because so many people were depending on me and no one else knew how to work that machine except for me. I've learned from some nurse friends that people can sometimes have this odd physical reaction to certain types of anesthesia when coming out of it, but no one's ever heard of the weird mental, which felt very physical by the way, experience that I had in just those few seconds. I sometimes get the odd feeling like that was the real world, and what I'm experiencing now in my day-to-day is the delusion. And ever since then, I occasionally experience those weird phantom noises just as I'm drifting off to sleep. But instead of banging sounds or other startling noises, mine are odd electronic beeps and chirps, which give me flashbacks to that place that I was doing such important work at. So, Me and my group of friends, all of us are in our early 20s, we went to the Himalayas in December of 2025 for a trip to see the snow and experience the scenic view. Everything was going well. We stayed in a city called Gangtok, and then we went further north to a town/village called Lakung, which was just filled with hotels. We arrived at Lakung late at around 9 p.m., and there was no electricity, but we used our flashlights to carry all of our stuff to the top floor and to freshen ourselves up in the bathroom by taking a bath. It was in this moment when my friend was taking a bath, and I tried to scare and tease him by knocking on the foggy window pane that was connected between the bedroom and the bathroom. I vividly remember him taking a bath and using his flashlight, and remember seeing his silhouette through the pane. The next morning, I woke up early, and all of my friends also woke up with me, and it was then that I realized that there was no window between the bedroom and the bathroom. I expressed my worry, and I explained to them how there was a window here just last night, but they said I was just, overthinking. Maybe I was tired or something, and they confirmed that there never was any window between the rooms. They also said that there definitely was electricity last night, but I vividly remember there being no electricity and all of us having to use our flashlights for everything. And I also couldn't help but just have this looming, eerie feeling from this hotel because it was so big and the hallways were so huge and so dark. I could tell that there were people in the rooms and there were people kind of walking up and down the hallways, but I also felt no presence of any humans at all. I don't know how to explain that. Like, I saw the people there, but I don't think I could feel them. My cousin and I grew up living in different countries, but we stayed at our grandparents' house together every summer. Occasionally, one of her friends would visit for a few days. One summer, it was Amy Smith. She was cool, and she made an impression on me, though I felt she partied a little too hard, if you know what I mean. This was about 13 years ago. We were 17 and 19 at the time. I would ask about Amy when I saw my cousin every summer after that. And about 2 years later, my cousin said that her and Amy had drifted apart. Amy's brother had OD'd, and she got really depressed, and she ended up spiraling. My cousin felt bad that they weren't in touch anymore. Life went on, and I put Amy and her brother out of my mind. Occasionally, though, I saw Amy's Facebook posts, and some of them were tributes to her brother, tagged as Joe Smith, which reinforced the story in my head that her brother died and his death really did shatter her. I celebrated the 4th of July recently with my cousin in her hometown. There were a bunch of her friends there wearing sweatshirts in memoriam of Joe Smith. And my cousin said, "Remember Amy, who visited us a long time ago? Her brother OD'd, and we made these sweatshirts in his honor." I thought to myself, well, that's nice. It's been over 10 years, but sure, let's keep the memory alive. Good job. We were distracted, making barbecue during this conversation, and I didn't really talk about it much beyond that. Except looking at Facebook later, there were a few posts of the party and the sweatshirts saying something along the lines of, "I can't believe it's only been a year since Joe died. We miss you, bro. Always in our hearts." And I thought that was weird. So I did some digging on Facebook, and I saw a post by Amy with a black and white photo of her and Joe as kids, talking about how she was 18 months clean. It was hard, but she was proud, and she knew that Joe was looking down from her from the afterlife, being proud of her too. that was posted in November of 2024. I swear I'd seen this exact same post more than 5 years ago. I remember the 18 months clean milestone and thinking, good for her. I remember the black and white photo and talking about her brother looking down on her from the afterlife. I looked back at Amy's timeline, and her posts about her brother's death just started a year ago. All of the posts about him before that, he was alive and well. I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. So I texted my cousin to ask if Amy had any other brothers who had died, and she said Amy only had the one brother, Joe, the one who died last year. So I told her that I remembered her telling me about this years ago. She said that was impossible since her brother died just last July. But he'd been struggling and in and out of rehab for years, so maybe she had talked about that and I just misunderstood and thought he died. But I don't think so. I vividly recall her saying that the brother died and seeing plenty of tribute posts about him over the last 10 years. But now all of those are gone, and it all seems to have been restarted just a year ago. I know this isn't the craziest story ever, but there are a few posts in the sub with similar death timeline changes. So, I thought I should share my experience to the archive. Maybe I am just misremembering, but I really don't think I am. It feels so real to me. There's somebody in the comments that asks, did your cousin say he died or that he OD'd? Because OD often means death, but not always. And they go on to say, I do believe you. I'm just asking for clarification. And OP responds with, that's a great question. I clearly remember her saying he died of an overdose. She told me that Amy was very affected by his death since they were super close, and that's a big part of the reason that she spiraled into drugs and that they were no longer friends. I remember this whole conversation and then seeing Amy's posts about her brother. Things like, today you would have turned 27. I still think about you. All that kind of stuff. But apparently her brother was actually 31 when he passed earlier this year. So my memories are not just about my cousin saying he OD'd. Since I was a kid, I've had a strong connection with magic. Of course, that's a topic that appeals to all children. However, mine was more about interdimensional travel. I believed in the existence of different universes even before I had ever heard of them, and I was convinced that I could travel between them or that I already had. While I do remember that feeling, the rest of my childhood is somewhat blurry and confusing, but despite not having a good memory, I do remember one place. It was a beautiful, large space, though it didn't seem to make much sense. There were plants and lots of vegetation, while in other parts it was just an area full of stairs in the middle of space. The common feature of all these settings was that they were full of doors, and each door could take me to a different place. That particular place felt like home. And I even remember having 2 fox-like animals as companions. One was completely white, and his name was Zach, and the other was this dull gray color named Neblina. They could communicate with me and open portals. I know, it sounds like a childhood dream, completely absurd. However, I remembered that it hadn't been a dream. Only now I don't know what it is. I used to write in my diaries saying that no one would ever believe me if I told them this, but I never left a concrete explanation. All of that happened while I was still a child between 5 and 7. As I grew up, and due to the problems that arose in my life, I stopped paying attention to that issue. I always said that I was just a very imaginative girl and that it was all due to that. But something felt strange. Somehow I felt like I was missing something, that I was forgetting important things about myself, and above all, that I had to be somewhere else doing something important. I just don't know what. As time went on, increasingly strange things started to happen to me. At first, they were just absurd predictions. I was able to guess when a friend was going to get hurt. I knew when someone was going to approach me and with what intentions. Basically, high intuition, or so I think. I also had lucid dreams and recurring nightmares, which often ended with a woman's scream and me being pulled into the center of the earth. These things also happened to me when I was little, but things got worse. I started having flashbacks and memories that couldn't possibly be mine, from different lives and experiences. From these memories, I extracted knowledge that I apparently already possessed, and I began to become skilled at things I never learned to do. My dreams intensified to the point that I don't go a night without dreaming something. Now, yes, I know that humans dream whenever they sleep, but despite my poor memory, I always remember them. And I've been able to recall 5 dreams from one single night. The next day, I always feel incredibly tired. It's as if when I dream certain things, I can't truly rest. And often these are lucid dreams in which people tell me they're looking for me. I also tend to have this feeling that something is going to happen, only I don't know what. Later came the visions. I don't know if that's the right word, but I don't know how else to describe them. English is not my first language, so please bear with me. I would be peacefully admiring the landscape, and out of nowhere, images would start coming to me of that same place, but now they were completely destroyed, burned down with a giant red moon or something like it in the sky. It also happened that I would be walking, and suddenly images of spiders would appear, emerging from everywhere. I could even feel them on my body. A week later, there was a strange spider infestation where I live. When I touched certain objects, I would see images of how they had been made. Or at least that's what I think they were. I'm not sure, because I really don't know how I could possibly know how all of these things are made. Dizziness, headaches, memory problems, exhaustion, and I even started feeling other people's emotions, both from this world and what I think might be other worlds too. But there's always this feeling that I'm just not where I should be, that I don't belong here, in this world, but that I can't leave because something is holding me back. I started to think I was going crazy. I know, you probably are too. But I was never diagnosed with any mental illness, only with a very vivid imagination. I'm sure you've heard that before too. I never knew what was wrong with me. I've believed in the existence of alternate dimensions since I was a child, and I doubt that'll ever change. I wouldn't want to say for sure that what I'm experiencing is directly related to that, but come on. I can't help but feel that there's something more, like a dimension that I called home once upon a time. Has anyone else ever experienced anything like this? Do you have any idea what it could be? For some context, my family and I moved into our current house, in the house that this story takes place in, when I was like 3 years old. It's a 2-story building that was built sometime in the early 2000s. There are 3 bedrooms on the second floor. The master bedroom is to the left of this little walkway at the end of the staircase. Right next to it, on the right, was the room that my younger sister and I used to sleep in when we were younger. And the last room, which was meant to be used as my younger brother's room once he got older, was all the way at the end of the hallway. But that room was always empty and mostly used as a storage room for the most part. When I was around 7 to 8 years old, I had developed this new schedule of after-school procrastination. I would come home, shower, and then sit on my parents' bed to watch PBS in my mom's bedroom. She had the biggest TV in the house and by far the better graphics than the other TVs. And the TV sat on top of a large drawer in front of her bed. My sister, who's a year and a half younger than me, would usually sit with me to watch whatever was playing. We particularly loved when Curious George came on. So, since that show always came on at 4, I would always make sure to be out of the shower and dressed by 3:50 at the latest so we wouldn't miss it. I never really felt anything off about my parents' room, at least not while the sun was still up. But I always had this feeling about it once it became dark. It's a feeling that I still get to this day, even at 20 years old. I just can't walk past that room late at night without getting the heebie-jeebies. Something's always felt off about it at night, especially when I was younger. I hated being upstairs by myself. However, on this particular day, for whatever reason, I was up there alone. It was around October/November-ish, and as a result, they were playing an hour-long special of Curious George. But, I honestly can't remember if it was a Halloween or a Thanksgiving one. It was some sort of movie they were making a big deal out of. All I know is that I loved it enough to sit up there all by myself and watch it. I was at least a good 20 minutes in when I heard a noise from outside the hallway. I assumed it was my sister, so I just ignored it. And then at some point shortly after that, she comes in and she proceeds to stand right in front of the TV. My sister had this annoying habit of standing in front of any big screen and blocking the view for everyone. And while she wasn't really blocking my view in this moment, I knew that my mom hated it when she just stood there. She said it was rude or inconsiderate or something along those lines. Even still, in that particular moment, I didn't really care. I remember there had been this scene that just played that was very funny, and my sister missed the first part of. So I started to tell her what she had missed before, hoping to get some sort of laugh after I finished catching her up on the scene. But I didn't get a response, which annoyed me a bit, so I repeated myself. And still, she didn't acknowledge me. She stood still, staring into the TV and never once looking back at me. Because I was on my mom's bed and the TV was right in front of me, all I could really see was her back. The third time that I repeated myself and it still didn't get a response, I was getting irritated. I was yelling her name and telling her to stop ignoring me and to look at me. And that's when she turned around, and that's when I realized that wasn't really my sister. I mean, it looked like her. She was wearing the same clothes that she had been wearing earlier, but her eyes were different. All I really remember was how unsettling her eyes were. They were pitch black. Not to mention the emotionless expression that was now facing right at me. We both stared at each other for a while before this thing that I thought was my sister turned back around and then proceeded to walk out of the room. I was still a bit confused and weary in the moment, but then I got really angry because I was just blatantly ignored. So I got up off of my mom's bed and I walked out of the room after my sister. I yelled out for my mom, tattling that my sister had just been ignoring me and left me talking to myself like an idiot. My mom's voice answered back and she was confused. She said, "That's not possible, sweetie." That's when she told me that my sister had been downstairs with her for the last hour or more. I asked if maybe she had gone upstairs at some point and just hadn't realized, but she said no. And even if she had, she would have heard the squeaking of the floorboards that are right by her room. I was genuinely confused. Yet after that, I didn't feel comfortable being in that room by myself anymore, no matter what was on the TV. I've experienced other weird things that just can't be explained, but I often think about this one instance, and I wonder what it was that I was talking to that day. If anyone has any ideas or guesses as to what I could have been talking to, please let me know. This happened in West Central Illinois. This first occurrence happened maybe 6 months or so ago, at about 1 in the morning. It was storming, and I was driving home from work. I've got about an hour commute, and my normal exit was blocked off due to a semi going into the ditch nearby. I rerouted my GPS, and I took a different, unfamiliar way home, and I end up going through a wind turbine farm. For context, I have megalophobia, which, if you don't know what that is, it's the fear of really big things. And specifically, wind turbines really freak me out just because of how massive they are. And at night, they have these blinking red lights. It's just very ominous. Plus, the lightning would light up the sky every once in a while, and I'd see a flash of them. Anyway, point is, I was in a high-stress state on an unfamiliar country road. When this happened, I was probably 20 miles away from my house. So, I take a left turn, and as I'm about to straighten out the wheel, I see a black, shadowy, vaguely humanoid figure standing probably 7 to 8 feet tall. It's moving across the road very quickly. I use the word move because it looked like it was sprinting. However, there was no impact when its feet were hitting the ground. It moved smoothly, like it was floating. I could see the vague outline of abnormally long arms and legs. The silhouette was kind of hazy, so any outlines I saw, I'm not even sure if I actually saw. It was just a black mass, like if it was sprinting, there was no visible space between its body and limbs, if that makes sense. It was surrounded by a black mist or vapor or something. Incredibly hard to describe. My headlights were shining on it, but it was still completely black, like it was absorbing the light. It happened so fast that I couldn't register what I was even looking at. It ran into a cornfield, and I drove the rest of the way home, sobbing and paranoid. I also got this awful gut feeling, like an overwhelming sense of dread, right around the time that I saw this thing. From what I remember, it was like the gut feeling hit first, and then I saw the figure within just a few seconds. It all happened so fast that I can't even trust my own memory, though. And you know what? It didn't even seem fazed by me. It never shifted its attention towards me, or looked at me, or even acknowledged my presence at all. It just seemed to be on a mission to run into the cornfield. There was no distinguishable features, no visible face or clothing, just pure black. My partner and my parents believed me, and they made me feel like I'm not crazy when I told them this. My grandparents used to live in our current house, and they said that they've actually seen similar things in this area over the last 30 to 40 years. But for now, it's been long enough that I've tried to forget about it and convinced myself that it was a hallucination or maybe just my imagination from being in a stressful situation. Now, on to the next occurrence. My parents and uncle and cousins were outside our house tonight. I live with them, by the way. My cousins were visiting and I was inside. And we heard some sort of noise. My mom said it didn't sound like any animals that would be around here, but more like a person celebrating, saying woohoo or something similar. It sounded like it was coming from the front yard, so they shined a flashlight in that direction, but they didn't see anything. That's not the weird part though. They ordered pizza to be delivered earlier in the night, and shortly after hearing this noise, the delivery driver shows up. She seemed shook up when she got out of the car, and as she was handing over the pizza and taking care of the tip and everything, she told my mom that she saw some sort of shadowy figure run across our road just moments ago. Now we live on a gravel road. It's maybe half a mile away from the highway on one side and another half a mile away from our nearest neighbor. She described it in almost the exact same way that I did. Abnormally long limbs, dark and shadowy, even with the headlights shining directly on it, and moving very quickly across the road, so smooth that it looked like it was floating. She said that it scared the absolute crap out of her. I don't know if the noise they heard is related or not, but it's weird that they said it sounded so close to them. All of our neighbors are elderly folks and farmers who aren't close enough to hear that clearly. Some animals around here do make weird sounds. I mean, if you've ever heard of a caterwauling barred owl, you know they kind of sound like monkeys. So I think maybe for now, I'm choosing to believe that it was just one of those owls. But still, man, it really freaks me out that this woman saw the same thing that I did. And it's closer to my house now. Like, literally less than half a mile away. My mom is a pretty hardcore Christian and made a comment about how maybe it followed me home, which, I don't know, I don't necessarily believe, but I guess at this point I'm just considering all options. And that's why I'm telling you this now. If you have seen anything similar or have any insight about any of this, I'd honestly love to hear. Also, while I'm here, I have no history of hallucinations, and I've absolutely considered that as an option, but hearing the exact same description from someone else really weirded me out. Sorry for the long post. I haven't told anyone other than family, so I'm super curious to hear anybody else's perspectives. When I was about 7 or 8, my family moved into an old farmhouse in Virginia. I have a little brother. He's 3 years younger than me, so he was around 4 or 5 at the time. This house had an upstairs, which had 2 rooms. My brother and I were very excited about this since we always had to share a room until now. He picked the room to the left of the stairs. It was nice, but in the corner of the room, there was this tiny door that led to a small attic. It gave me this eerie feeling, so I never understood why he would pick that room, but he was hell-bent on that being his space. I took the room to the right, which had this nice little window that looked out over the farm. It was great. We set up our rooms and we unpacked. Fast forward to a few weeks later, my mom decides it's time for us to take a nap. In my own room, of course. Now, for some context, I had a little red rocking chair with Dalmatians with my name painted on it. It was the cutest. I had outgrown it though, since it was made for me when I was a toddler. Well, when we went to lay down for our nap, everything was fine, and then out of nowhere, my brother starts freaking out and screaming, clinging to my mother for dear life. My mother tried to soothe him, but nothing she was doing was helping. She asked my brother what was wrong, and then my brother pointed to the rocking chair and said, "There's a little girl in Sissy's chair, and she doesn't want us up here." He was so unconsolable that my mom had to bring both of us downstairs. That's the first time the entity, which is what we ended up calling her, made herself known. I never saw her, but I would always feel her presence or even have nightmares about her. The weird thing is that I'd only see her in my dreams or if I was in my room sleeping. So that quickly turned into my brother and I sleeping in my mom's bed. Most of the time, she would target my brother, so he never stayed in his own room. One night, my mom talks me and my brother into sleeping in my bed together upstairs so that she could have a little break. We only agreed to do it if we could leave the light on in the room. My mom said yes, and we fell asleep. Later on, I wake up in my room, and I'm alone, and everything's the same as I remember, but I can't find my brother anywhere. Something is telling me to get up and to go to the window. Still to this day, I don't know what that was, but I'm so glad that I listened to it. As soon as I get up and I go over to the window, I see the little girl, that entity that's been tormenting us for so long now, run to the side of the house and start crawling up the side to my window. In this moment, I realize I'm being startled awake before she can reach me, and then I immediately bolt up in the middle of my bed, and I realize I'm now reliving my dream. I'm panicking. I'm staring at the window because I feel like I know what's about to happen. And again, something is telling me to go over there. But this time, I don't do that. I leave my bedroom and I dart straight down the stairs to my mom's room, and I find my brother laying on the floor near the end of my mom's bed. We didn't say much to each other besides agreeing that we just felt safer near Mom. I learned years later that my brother had the same dream that night, by the way. We just never told each other until very recently. It gets crazier though. A couple of years later, we moved into a new house. This time, we were back to sharing rooms again, but honestly, we were fine with that. We thought we would finally have some peace, but oh boy, we were wrong. Shortly after moving, the same stuff started happening again, and this time, I actually saw her. It was dark out, and my mom needed something outside from her car, so I tell her I'll get it for her, and as soon as I retrieved what she needed from the car, I turned back to look towards the house to go back inside, but instead, I look over into the field which is just next to our house, and I can see the entity appearing and disappearing, and every time she would reappear, she would be closer to me. I never ran so fast in my life. I ran into the house completely hysterical. I told my mom and my stepdad, and they were obviously concerned. I remember my brother and I had been telling my mom that we'd seen the entity in the new house. Although nothing crazy ever happened, I don't really think she believed me. But after this moment, I think she actually did. We made the conclusion that she attached herself to my rocking chair. So, we moved again for the third time, and we did leave the rocking chair at the old house. And since then, we've never seen the entity. And I've never even dreamed about her since either. Growing up after this, I always wondered if she was an evil entity or some sort of demon in disguise. Whatever she was terrifying. I normally don't believe in anything spiritual or metaphysical or anything like that, but I still can't think of any rational explanation for what I saw. This happened in the middle of November, but I still think about it a lot even now. I live on the coast of Lake Michigan, where it's common for sea glass to wash up onto the beach. It's been a hobby of mine to collect it since I was a little kid, and I remember that my mom and I would always go collect it on the beach near our house. I prefer to go in late fall or early spring when nobody else is there to pick up the good pieces and the wind isn't too cold yet. There's a park near where I live now that's especially good for sea glassing. That's what it's called when you go out and collect sea glass. It's tucked in between a couple of private properties, so luckily for me, not a lot of people know about it. And in mid-November, the beach is completely empty. There's a paved trail that leads from the parking lot down through the ravine and to the beach house, but on this day, I felt like exploring a bit. I walked along the top of the bluff until I found a small unmarked trail, and I decided to follow that. It led down to the beach, but I couldn't find any good access points that didn't involve climbing, so I kept walking. Eventually, it led to a dead end. So I turned around and I walked back. But as I did, I heard something thump loudly on the ground, kind of like something falling out of a tree. Then, suddenly, I heard the sound of something charging through the brush straight towards me. It sounded large, like it could have been a bear, but there's no bears in this area. Instinctually, I made myself look as big as I could, and I shouted, "Hey," in a deep voice. Whatever it was stopped about 20 feet away from me, and I stood there just staring at the spot that I heard the sound coming from for about 30 seconds before cautiously continuing back up the trail. I went back to one of the clearings, and then I climbed down onto the beach. And that whole time I was walking, I couldn't shake the feeling that somebody was watching me. The beach was empty though, so I figured I was just shaken up from whatever happened in the woods. I also kept hearing a second set of footsteps in the gravel behind me, matching my pace exactly. But again, since nobody else was on the beach with me, I figured it was just an echo or something. Eventually, I end up making it to the beach house. At this point, I have to pee, so I go behind the beach house to see if the bathroom was open, and as I turned the corner, I saw something peeking around the far side of the building right at me. It had a human-like body, but it was about 7 feet tall, and it had deer antlers sprouting from both sides of its head. Its skin was so pale white that it was almost translucent. I swear when I close my eyes now and think of this thing, I can see the blue of the blood vessels underneath its skin. It had no discernible facial features. It had the bone structure of a face, but I couldn't see any eyes or a mouth or anything. As soon as I see this thing, I 180 faster than anybody's ever spun around before, and I immediately start booking it back up the main trail that I came from. Now, between me and you, I'm very out of shape, but I still ran the whole way all the way up the bluff. I thought I was going to pass out when I got to my car. I didn't even take a second to catch my breath before I turned the ignition on and bolted out of there in my car. I drove to a nearby restaurant, and while I was there, I texted my friend about what had just happened. He told me I was just upset about some other things that was going on in my life, and because of that, I was just seeing things. It felt so real to me. The color of this thing that I saw, the shape that it was, the antlers, the damn near translucency of this thing, it was all very visceral and genuine feeling. But still, I accepted what my friend said. I was experiencing some personal trauma during that time, and I guess I just wanted to believe that they were right. That was causing hallucinations. I was still feeling very emotional throughout the rest of the day, and I don't know, months later, I still can't get it out of my mind. It felt so real. If it was real, I swear it had to be some sort of entity or cryptid or something. So I'm making this post now to ask you all what you think it could be. Do you think it represents something? Like I said, I was going through something in my personal life. Or do you think I could have actually witnessed some sort of interdimensional spirit or something? This next story is a response to a question, and the question was, what's the most unbelievable, strangest experience that you've ever had that still makes you question reality and has haunted you to this day? The story goes, I once visited a haunted church. It was told to me by someone who had been there before on a sort of ghost hunt that it was children haunting the church. The place was built in either the late 1700s or the early 1800s, and it has this small cemetery out front. Some of the graves don't even have names on them. Now, this person told me that they had gotten responses from the spirits or the entities or whatever's there to play hide and seek. I ended up going, and after experiencing something opening a door and then hearing footsteps come out and then run back in, and then hearing the door slamming shut again, I said something like, "You don't have to be afraid. Come play hide and seek with us." Now that night, I started to get a really sore feeling in the back of my neck, and it just kept getting worse. The only way to describe it is if I'd been carrying something heavy around my neck, and the strain of it was causing pain to increase slowly over time. It started to creep up my neck and then into the back of my skull, and I was getting this headache. Eventually, we decided to leave the church. As we were driving away, we were about a block away when suddenly, all at once, that pain and the stiffness and that feeling of weight around my neck just goes away. Completely gone. All of a sudden, I felt totally fine, and I was thankful about this, but I didn't really think anything of it other than just being relieved that I was no longer in pain. At that time, I was a smoker. And if you've ever smoked, then you know smokers tend to always know where their cigarettes are. Later that night, when I finally made it home, I did what I do every time I get home. I took my keys, my wallet, my cigarettes, and my lighter out of my pockets, and I set them on top of my TV stand in this small bowl that I use for only those things and some spare change, so that I always know where those things are when I need them. I then took off my jacket, and I turned around to toss it over a chair in my room. I wanted a cigarette, and I immediately turned back around to grab them and to grab my lighter from that bowl. The cigarettes were gone, though. I was somewhat baffled, as there was no way they could have fallen out of the bowl, and if they had somehow fallen out, I would have heard the pack hit the floor. Even so, I looked all around the area. The bowl was rested on my TV stand, so I looked behind it, under it. I even looked under my bed in case they did fall and slid across the room for some reason. I looked everywhere. Suddenly, I flashed back in my mind to that moment at the church just earlier that night when I said, "Come play hide and seek with us." And then that feeling of pain and weight around my neck just came flooding back again. It was like the memory of it just slapped me in the face. Now, this is where it gets super weird, and I swear this happened. The only thing that I could think of was in asking it to play and welcoming its presence. I figured whatever entity or presence was at the church had latched onto me and maybe followed me home. I stared into the bowl that did not contain my cigarettes anymore. I closed my eyes and I said out loud, "Okay, real funny, I don't want to play anymore. I would really like my cigarettes back. I need them back." I then opened my eyes, and there they were, sitting in the bowl right in front of me, in the exact place that I had put them when I first walked in my house not 4 minutes ago. I have no explanation for this. Now, this wasn't the only instance of this happening either. About a week later, I went to a friend's house, and again, my cigarettes, it was always my cigarettes, they disappeared. Now, I hadn't told my friend of the previous experience at all. I had 2 packs, one that was almost empty, maybe 4 or 5 left, and then a second full pack in my jacket. I walked into his room, I set my cigarettes and my lighter on the end table by my seat, I walked out, and then I set my jacket over the back of the couch in the living room. When I came back into that room, my cigarettes were gone. I asked my friend if he saw them and if he did anything with them, and then he looked confused and he said, "Why? No, man, I've got my own. Why would I take yours?" He then helped me look all around the table and the chair that I was sitting in. We looked underneath things, we looked everywhere for a good 5 minutes, and eventually I said, "Screw it. I've got a full pack in my jacket, I'll just open those." I grabbed that pack, and then I just smoked out of that pack for the rest of the night. When I finally did leave for the night, I decided to do one final sweep and look for the first pack of cigarettes again. I still didn't find any, and then I decided to use the bathroom before I headed out. When I came out of the bathroom, my friend looked at me and pointed to the end table that I had originally set the first pack down on, and he says, "Hey, don't forget your cigarettes. You don't want to lose 2 packs." My mouth dropped as I reached into my pocket and pulled out the full pack that I had been smoking from all night. I pulled that pack out of my jacket, and I watched his mouth drop to the floor as he mouthed, "What the F?" When he too realized that the pack I had lost, the one that he helped me search for earlier that night, was suddenly back exactly where I had placed it hours ago. And he swore up and down that he was not messing with me. I then decided to tell him about the previous experience in my home the night of the ghost hunt, and I could visibly see chills run down his spine. He basically pushed me out of his house as fast as he could, saying he didn't want me bringing anything like that into his home. When I got home, I parked in my driveway, and I was about to get out of my vehicle, but before I went inside, I said out loud, "Okay, it's been fun, but I really don't want to play anymore. You need to stop. You're scaring people." And it's never happened since. This is something that I could never explain, nor do I really think about anymore. But your question just reminded me of this, and I always found it incredibly odd. Like, did they physically move? Or did they just literally disappear and then reappear? Was there a pack of cigarettes floating across the room into a hiding spot and then back again? Or did they simply vanish and then reappear? I really do think that whatever entities were at that church that night were just having a bit of fun. Nothing bad or traumatic ever happened, other than just the pain around my neck and that weight feeling that I was carrying anytime I was thinking about this place or experiencing these disappearances. I don't know. What do you think happened?